For a book called Proverbs, it's kind of odd we don't get any Proverbs until chapter 10. Instead, chapters 1 through 9 give us 10 father to son speeches with 4 lady wisdom speeches sprinkled throughout. Now, these 10 daddy speeches, they all follow the same pattern. There's an opening call in which the father says, "My son, listen to my voice, heed the words of my instruction." And then he gives his little lesson where he says, "Walk in this way, do not walk in that way." And then there's a concluding word where he says, "And then it will go well with you." Let's take a look at a little document I threw together describing the structure of these opening chapters. So after the opening preamble in the first 7 verses of the book, we have these 10 father to son speeches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then 4 lady wisdom speeches. And you see in light blue, I've kind of called attention to the repeating structure of these father to son speeches with an opening call, a lesson, and a conclusion. Let's look at one of these. Maybe let's look at number 8 here in chapter 5 and kind of see how this works. Okay, here we are. So here's the opening call. "My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding." And then we have this lesson, and it looks like, yeah, the lesson has to do with the adulteress. That's a common lesson from the father, and she's kind of like an incarnation or an expression of Lady Folly. So that's very important. Let's look at this lesson quickly. "For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey. Her speech is smoother than oil. Keep your way far from her. Rather, drink water from your own cistern." And then I think this is the conclusion here in the last 3 verses. "For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all of his paths." See how it kind of has a concluding ring to it there? Well, all of these speeches, the purpose of them is persuasion. The whole point of the first 9 chapters of the book of Proverbs is to get you to take seriously the next 20, um, getting you to value wisdom and to shun folly. And it's going to use both negative arguments and positive arguments. Let's take a look at a negative argument first. I think this is from Lady Wisdom. I want to jump over to chapter 1. Here we are. So Lady Wisdom is speaking here. "Wisdom cries aloud in the streets, and she says, but if you refuse to listen, if you do not heed my counsel, if you ignore it, and you have nothing of my reproof, but you hated the knowledge of the Lord, well then calamity will come upon you. Terror will strike you. Distress and anguish will come upon you." However, the majority of the persuasive techniques utilized in these opening 9 chapters are positive, describing the wonderful effects of a life that is committed to wisdom, a wisdom which is the fear of the Lord. Let's look at chapter 4 for some of those persuasive arguments why we should pursue wisdom, and we should pay attention to chapters 10 through 29. So here's the opening call. "Hear, O son, a father's instruction, that you may gain insight." And what is the lesson? What is he calling the son to do? He says, "Get wisdom," in verse 5. Get insight, get wisdom, get insight. And what does he promise will take place if you do get chokmah? Well, then she will keep you. She will guard you. She will exalt you. Wisdom will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place a garland on your head. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. Now, who is this she? Well, it is Lady Wisdom, of course. And the opening chapters, they personify wisdom, Chokmah, as a woman. And they make the claim that this woman, Lady Wisdom, was with God at creation, at the very beginning. And it makes this claim in 2 places, in chapter 3 and in chapter 8. The poem in chapter 8 is beautiful. Take a look at this. "Chokmah, Lady Wisdom, was with God in the beginning. Does not wisdom call? I, wisdom, dwell with prudence. The Lord, Yahweh, possessed me at the beginning of his work. Ages ago, I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he assigned to the sea its limits so that the water might not transgress his commands. You know what that reminds me of? When he assigned to the sea its limits, that reminds me of the boundaries and the limits that God built in, that he wired, that he wove into creation. In the same way that there are physical limitations on the raw materials that Bezalel uses to perform his craft and his expression of Hokmah, so there are moral laws and moral limitations which are built into the moral universe as well. And if you follow them, if you go with the grain of the universe, it will lead to success. Now let's see how Lady Wisdom makes this claim here in chapter 8. It says, if we continue, that I was there beside him like a master workman, Bezalel. I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world, inhabited with whom? Delighting with the children of man. Now she, Lady Wisdom, is going to call out. She's going to call out to the children of man. Look at the beginning of this chapter. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads, she takes her stand beside the gates in the front of the town. At the entrance of the portal, she cries aloud, to you, O men, I call, and my cries to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. And she promises that if you listen to the words of Hokmah, and if you learn to follow them, well, then you will be blessed. And look at this blessing. Look at this positive, persuasive argument in chapter 3. It is phenomenal. Blessed is the one who finds Hokmah, the one who gets understanding, for the gain from her is better than the gain from silver, and her profit is better than gold. She is far more precious than jewels. Nothing that you desire can compare with her. Let's keep reading. It's just fantastic. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. I mean, who wouldn't sign up for this deal? But look at the next line. She, wisdom, Hokmah, she is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. She is a tree of life. Now we said earlier that when we step into the book of Proverbs, we step out of the whole stream of the Hebrew Bible. But that's not completely true, is it? You see, this word, the tree of life, plugs us back into that big story. How does it do that? The book of Proverbs universalizes the Garden of Eden story. And it invites us to see ourselves in the garden with a choice to make, with two trees before us, the tree of the knowing of good and evil and the tree of life. And it presents us with a choice. Will we take wisdom for ourselves and define good and evil how we see fit? Will we be wise in our own eyes? That's a statement that Proverbs will use continually to describe the fool. The fool is wise in his own eyes. He defines right and wrong for himself. Or will we submit to God's wisdom, which is the fear of the Lord? And you see, that is the choice that Solomon presents us with here in the book of Proverbs. It is as if he is warning us not to repeat the mistakes that he made. You see, at the beginning of his reign, Solomon, he ordered his kingdom by wisdom, by Hokmah, didn't he? That's what he prayed for. And as a result, Israel became a Garden of Eden. Look at this. What was Solomon like at the beginning of his reign? 1 Kings 4:29. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom beyond all measure. And in verse 24, scroll up a bit. For he had dominion over all of these places, and he had peace on all sides around him. Judah and Israel lived in safety, and every man, look at this, every man lived under his vine and under his fig tree. This is like they're returning to the Garden of Eden. There's peace, there is prosperity. That's when Solomon listened to Lady Wisdom. But then, just like Adam listened to Eve, so Solomon listened to all of the foreign women, and they led his heart away from the fear of the Lord and towards idolatry and the worship of foreign gods. And that plunged Israel then, as a nation, into darkness. Man, if only Solomon had a mother like Lemuel's mom. Lemuel? Well, we're introduced to a guy named Lemuel in chapter 31. Now, we had got no idea who he is. Lemuel doesn't show up anywhere else in the Bible. But the final editor of the book of Proverbs knew that Lemuel's wisdom belonged right here as the final word of the whole book of Proverbs. Let's take a look at that. Chapter 31. And why Lemuel's mom? Well, let's see. Proverbs 31. We know that chapter, don't we? Proverbs 31. The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. Now, what did his mommy say? She said, "What are you doing, my son? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings." Well, do not give your strength to women. That's what Solomon did, wasn't it? He gave his strength to many women, to 700 wives, 300 concubines. They led his heart astray. They destroyed him and his kingdom. She says, Lemuel's mom tells Lemuel who is a king. No, keep your heart away from many women, but rather choose the one priceless woman. And we know who she is, don't we? The Proverbs 31 woman. We're familiar with her. Let's look at some of her virtues here. Proverbs 31. An excellent wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. I mean, this woman is amazing. But does she remind you of anyone in real life? Probably not. You've probably never met anyone quite like the Proverbs 31 woman. But what about earlier in the book of Proverbs? Does she remind you of anyone earlier in this book? Let's go back to the text here. What does the Proverbs 31 woman say? Well, she opens her mouth with chokmah, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She, the Proverbs 31 woman, sounds to me a little bit like Lady Wisdom. What do you think? Now, I think that the author, he's doing something. He's up to something here. If you compare these two women, you'll notice a few more similarities. An excellent wife who can find? Well, Proverbs 1 through 9 is all about finding Lady Wisdom. Blessed is the one who finds wisdom. I love those who love me, those who seek me and diligently find me. Whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. She is far more precious than jewels, Proverbs 31 woman. The exact same thing is said of Lady Wisdom in chapter 3. The heart of her husband, what is this? Bata her, trusts in her. The one who listens to Lady Wisdom will trust her, will dwell secure. She is profitable, same words. She reaches out, Proverbs 31 woman, reaches out her hands to the needy. So Lady Wisdom stretches out her hands and says, come, listen to me. But most importantly, this last comparison, Proverbs 31 woman, charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And in the final Lady Wisdom speech in chapter 9, to sum it all up, she says, fear of the Lord is the beginning of chokmah, of wisdom. So what's going on here? I think that the Proverbs 31 woman is the incarnation of Lady Wisdom. And she is the woman that Lemuel's mom is urging Lemuel, a king, to pursue, to go after. And therefore, in the narrative context of the whole book of Proverbs, a book which is about a king speaking to his royal sons, here in the last chapter of the book, it is as if the king is urging his sons one last time to reject Lady Folly. Turn away, stay away from all these many women. Reject Lady Folly and embrace Lady Wisdom. She, after all, is altogether desirable. You should want to pursue a woman like Lady Wisdom, or pursue wisdom itself, is the message of the book of Proverbs. And so, in a book which began with speeches from a father to a son about Lady Wisdom, the book ends with speeches from a mother to her son about a wise woman. Isn't that beautiful? What a work of art we have in the book of Proverbs. But we have one more character to meet, a guy named Agur, and we're going to see what he has to say next.